Before we start this video, subscribe to my channel, give a like, and click the bell for more updates. Hi everyone, today I'm going to be reading another book called The Bringer of Doom, Hydrant Hydra. Chapter 1, Swamp Creatures. Help! Said Alexander's dad as he opened the door. Swamp creatures are taking over my house. Globs of mud fell from Alexander's shoes as he climbed up the front steps. His friends Rip and Nicky followed. They were even muddier. Garr! They said as they held out their muddy fingers like monster claws. Then Rip and Nicky laughed, but not Alexander. He never joked about monsters. He knew that monsters were real, and Sermont was crawling with them. Alexander's dad smiled as he looked across the yard. I see muddy trucks, muddy footprints, and a dozen mud pies, he said. Looks like you mud monsters had fun today. Alexander winked at Rip and Nicky. His dad didn't know it, but his two best friends were secretly monsters, good monsters. Nicky, a vampire, eats red, juicy food. Seasoned dark, has fangs, and avoids sunlight. Rip seems like an ordinary boy, but when he eats sweets, he transforms into a knuckle fist punch smasher. Rip keeps some monster ants in his pocket. When they eat sweets, they transform into ginorm ants. Together, Alexander, Rip, and Nicky were members of the super secret monster patrol, the SSMP. Protected Sermont from all sorts of stomping, roaring, kid-eating monsters. Okay, Al, shower time, said Alexander's dad. Say goodnight to your friends. Bye, Salamander, said Rip and Nicky. Alexander smiled. Salamander was his nickname. He plopped off his muddy shoes and headed inside. Seriously, kiddo, said his dad. You find new ways to get messy every day. It just means I'm having a good summer, said Alexander. He high-fived his dad, ran upstairs, and hopped in the shower. He had lots of messy days this summer because most of these were because of his summer maker program, aka SSMP. It's not from the book. He often came home from camp covered in marker, paint, glue, or even glitter. I can't wait to find out what this week's project will be, he thought as the last of the soapy water swirled around the drain. He stepped out of the shower. Then even the bathroom was steamy and shivered. Two eyes stared at him from the foggy bathroom mirror. Angry, evil eyes. Alexander wiped the mirror and saw his own eyes looking back with wide in fear. Alexander wiped the mirror and saw his own eyes looking back, wide with fear. He grabbed his toothbrush and ran downstairs. Al, asked his dad, why are you brushing your teeth over the kitchen sink? Alexander wanted to say, because there's no mirror down here with foggy monster eyes in it. But he didn't say anything because grown-ups couldn't see monsters. Instead, he just mumbled with a mouthful of toothpaste and spat it in the sink. Chapter 2, Soggy Socks. Slow down, Al, said Alexander's dad at breakfast. You're getting syrup everywhere. Alexander swallowed his last bite of pancake. Sorry, I'm meeting Rip and Nicky before camp. Oh, sounds important, said his dad, smiling. Then you better skedaddle. Don't forget your shoes. You're still out on the porch. Alexander hugged his dad and ran outside. He blinked. The porch was totally clean, not a single smudge of mud anywhere. Even his sneakers sparkled in the sunlight. Nice, thought Alexander. Dad must have cleaned everything up last night. I'll have to thank him later. He stuck his foot in one sneaker. Squish! The shoe was totally wet. Dang, said Alexander. He thought about running inside to find another pair of shoes. Forget it, he decided. A monster meeting is more important than having dry feet. Squish! He put on his other shoe. Then he raced downtown on his bike. He parked and snuck into the woods behind the library. 900 squishy footsteps later, he arrived at SSMP headquarters. 3 stories tall, slides for going down, ladders for going up. Rip and Nicky were swinging on an oversized tire swing. Hop on, Salamander, Nicky called. Alexander climbed on the swing. I saw a monster last night, he said. Really? Asked Rip. Did it have tentacles, or a stinger, or 6 rows of teeth? I'm not sure, said Alexander. I just saw 2 eyes in my bathroom mirror. What kind of eyes? Asked Nicky. They looked evil, said Alexander, and, foggy. But when I wiped the mirror, they were gone. Said Nicky. Then maybe you didn't see a monster. Alexander leaned back, pulling hard on the tire swing rope. As he tried to remember the eyes. That's when he spotted something. A tire, a bit of paper. Is that what I think it is? He asked. The swing came to a halt as Alexander grabbed the paper. Is that what I think it is? He asked. Oh, it's a monster card, Rip said. Splatterpillar, level 4. A greasy bug that sprays gunk on your lunch. Attacks slime spurt. 40. Goose poo. 30. Habit sticky drippy cocoon. Diet wilted lettuce drilled with spoiled mayo. Type bug, and it's gross. In late spring, this monster transforms into a sputterfly. Caterpillar, butterfly, sputterfly, sputterpillar, splatterpillar, sputterfly. Alexander took a binder from his backpack. He flipped past pages of maps and drawings to add a section filled with monster cards. Then he added this new card to the binder. I wish we knew who was leaving these cards everywhere, said Rip. Yeah, said Nicky. It's weird how we're always finding them in places where we hang out. Maybe it's an evil eye monster, said Alexander. Maybe it's hiding these cards just for us to find. Maybe, said Rip. If you really did see a monster in the mirror. I did, said Alexander. I'm almost definitely 99% kinda sorta sure. Alexander hopped down from the swing and looked at his friends. Okay, fine. I don't know what I saw. Let's just go to Maker Camp. Chapter 3. Puddle Jumper. Peppa Pig Puddle Jumper. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky were walking out of the woods when Alexander froze in his tracks. Listen, he said. Do you hear something? His friends paused. Click, clack, skitter, clomp, clomp, clomp. It's coming from the front of the library, said Rip. It sounds like a rock rolling down the sidewalk, said Nicky. And maybe somebody's jumping. Maybe. And somebody's jumping, maybe. It must be the evil eye monster, said Alexander. He peeked around the side of the building. Hi, Alexander, shouted a friendly voice. That doesn't sound like a monster, said Rip. He and Nicky laughed as they ran around front. Alexander followed. 3 kids from camp were playing on the sidewalk. Becca was drawing squares with chalk. Chuck was writing numbers inside each square, and May was standing on one foot, holding a stone in her hand. Clack, skitter. May tossed her stone onto one of the boxes. Clomp, clomp, clomp. She hopped along, avoiding the square with the stone. We're playing hopscotch, said Chuck. Try it, it's fun, said Becca. Rip and Nicky hopped along the hopscotch court. Your turn, Alexander, said May. Do it with your eyes closed, added Rip. Alexander stepped up front to the square and tossed a stone. Then he closed his eyes and started hopping. Clomp, 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 clomp. Splash! Dang, said Alexander, opening his eyes. He had landed in a big puddle, past square number 10. Ha, said Rip. Only you could land in a puddle on a sunny day. Alexander sighed as he followed the rest of the campers into the library. Chapter 4. Coolest, neatest, bestest. The campers plopped down on the beanbags. The library was warm, sunny, and fun, just like the librarian. Good morning, Maker Bees, said Miss Sprinkles. She circled the beanbags, high-fiving each camper. Get ready for the coolest, neatest challenge of the summer. This week we're going to tackle some world records. She brought out a large book. The campers spent the next several minutes pointing at photos and people doing incredible tricks and stunts. Gross, said Chuck. That guy's covered in worms. That girl's playing 4 recorders with her nose, said Becca. Check out that motorcycle riding axe juggler, said Rip. Those world records are all really fun, said Miss Sprinkle said. But this week, our town is going to break the bestest world record ever. Miss Sprinkles pointed to a poster on the wall. Gather round the bonfire for s'mores fest. The town's Stermont will make history by creating the world's biggest s'more. Gigantic graham crackers, massive marshmallow, tons of chocolate, provided by you. When? Wednesday at sunset. Where? At Sermont Bowl in Deward Park. S'more Fest is going to be a big deal, said Miss Sprinkles. Even the mayor will be there. So to get in the spirit, you each are going to set your own world record on Wednesday. She wheeled the whiteboard over the whiteboard. This week's Maker Challenge. Today and tonight, read about world records to get ideas of your own for your own. Tomorrow, come ready with their idea, then get to work breaking that record. Wednesday, share time, show us your work. Wednesday night, S'more Fest at the park. The campers flipped through books looking for inspiration. I wish there were a record for most monsters defeated, Nicky whispered to Alexander and Rip. Yeah, we'd break that one easily, Rip laughed. But Alexander wasn't listening. He was too busy sketching in his binder. There was only one monster he wanted to find now. Chapter 5, Dirty Woods. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky compared world record books on their walk home. I bet I could do the longest hula hoop session while eating vanilla pudding, said Rip. No way, said Nicky. The record is 14 hours, 9 minutes. How about butterscotch? Rip said. Beep, beep. The 3 friends looked up as Alexander's dad pulled over. Hey, kiddos, he said, waving. I'm off to get the car washed. I realized how dirty it was until someone left me a message. Alexander looked at the car. It was covered in dust and grime. Along the side, someone had written, "Wash me, or else." Alexander, Rip, and Nicky looked at their large, splashy letters. It's a warning, said Alexander whispered. Nah, said Rip, it's probably just a prank. Rip's right, said Nicky. People write "wash me" on dirty cars all the time. Hop in, you 3, said Alexander's dad. I'll drive you home after we give the Bop-mobile a good scrubbing. Alexander climbed in and scooched over to make room for his friends. Then he paused and tucked in his seatbelt. There tucked under his seatbelt was the monster card. Was another monster club. Bite bulb, level 1. An 8-watt monster who's a bit dim. Attacks flash bash, which is 10. Socket sock, 5. 15. Habitat, lamps, closets, and the basement stairway. Diet electric eels. Type thingy and bug. Because it's a light bulb plus monster bug. It's basically a bug plus a light bulb. This monster likes to appear over your head. That's not a good idea. Oh, so it's part spider and it's a light bulb because it's like camouflaging as a real light bulb that's above you. The SSMP whispered while Alexander's dad drove. The light bulb sure looks freaky, said Rip. Is that the monster you saw, Salamander? Asked Nicky. It can't be, said Alexander. The light bulb has 8 eyes. But I only saw 2 in my bathroom mirror. Kids, look, said Alexander's dad. Get ready for it. From the front seat, the town is getting ready for a s'more fest. They were driving by the park where workers were stacking logs for a huge bonfire. A few minutes later, Alexander's dad pulled into Sermont Auto Wash. The outside of the building was bright and cheery, but the inside was dark and steamy. Looks like we're about to drive into a hungry mouth, whispered Alexander. He, Rip, and Nicky swallowed as the car rolled inside. Gulp. Chapter 6. All washed up. Alexander looked out the grimy front windshield as the car entered the deep, dark car wash. Push! Sprayer splashed the hood. Flam, flam, flam! Wriggling ragged noodles slapped against the windshield. Alexander tilted his head. He could hear something, a hissing, gurgling sound beneath the sound of the sprayers and the noodles. Alexander gulped. The hissing gurgle was a voice. You will be clean, it said. Alexander looked at Rip and Nicky. Did you hear that? He whispered. They nodded. Their eyes were big as headlights. Yeah, his dad shouted from the front seat. Those spray jets sure are loud. Whoosh! Clouds of steam filled the tunnel as the jets blasted the car with hot, sudsy water. Vur! Scrubber arms came down from the ceiling, whirring like power drills. Alexander gasped. For a brief moment, he saw something wet and shiny bobbing behind the scrubbers. It looked like some sort of animal with a snout. Is that an alligator? He whispered. The steam was so thick that Alexander could barely see out the window. No, said Rip. It's got a long neck, like a dragon, added Nicky. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky huddled together as the car rocked and lurched from the force of the scrubbers. Yee-haw! Shouted Alexander's dad. This is like an amusement park ride. Glor! With the gut-turning gurgle, the monstrous face rose up behind the car. Ack! Said Nicky. The dragon gator is behind us. It looks more like a bird, said Rip. That's a beak, that's a beak, not a snout. The sudsy monster reared back and wham! It smashed against the car. When the final slurping sound, the monster disappeared. Phoom! A powerful blower swung down, blasting the car with hot air. Alexander could feel the heat from inside the car, which became dry in seconds. Alexander's dad whistled as he drove out into the sunlight. Our car is spotless, he said. It's shinier than a molar after a 6-month checkup. Then he sang along with the radio. Alexander looked back at the Sermont Auto Wash. There was no sign of the soapy dancing long-necked alligator dragon bird. What was that thing? Asked Nicky. Beats me, beats me, said Rip. It was hard to see in there. I did make out one important detail, said Alexander. It had the same evil eyes I saw in my bathroom mirror. Rip's and Nicky's mouths fell open. Chapter 7. Evil Rainbow. Alexander thought about the evil eye monster all night, and during breakfast the next morning, and on his ride to Maker Camp, he was so focused on the monster he almost didn't see the fire truck in front of the library. Skirt! Alexander slammed the brakes and dropped his bike. He ran up to the wet sidewalk. A firefighter was talking to Miss Sprinkles and the campers. He read the patch on the firefighter's suit. "We've been seeing puddles like this everywhere," said Chief Teresa. "We think some prankster has been opening fire hydrants all over town." "The prankster washed away our hopscotch court," said May. Alexander looked down. The sidewalk was totally clean. There was no trace of the hopscotch court. "Cheer up," said Becca. "I bought treats." She opened a cooler and handed out ice pops. "I need you to eat them so I can use the sticks for my project. Sugar doesn't exactly agree with me," he said, giving Alexander and Nikki a look. Chief Tessera chose the lemon ice pop. "The weird part is the hydrants are all closed when I get to them," she said. "Anyhow, I've got to check on a couple more puddles over at the park. I've got to make sure everything's shipshape for S'more Fest." The campers waved with drippy, sticky hands as Chief Teresa drove away. "Oops," said Miss Sprinkles. "Looks like those ice pops were a bit melty." She turned to Alexander. "Would you grab a garden hose so you can rinse off before we head inside?" "Sure," said Alexander. He jogged across the lawn and picked up a hose. "Ow," he said. The hose felt hot from the lying sun. Alexander twisted the nozzle. At first, nothing happened. Then the hose began to shake. A second later, splish! Water sprayed upward. Alexander could see a rainbow. Then the water hit the sunlight. And then Alexander saw two evil eyes. "Ah!" He threw the hose. It flopped and flailed like an angry snake gushing water. Everyone was drenched from head to toe. Not everyone. Alexander was perfectly dry. Chapter 8. Chalk on the Walk. "All right, bee makers," said Miss Sprinkles. "We will have camp outside today so we can dry off. Let's start by sharing our world record ideas." The campers showed their plans. Becca, tallest ice pop stick skyscraper. Nikki, fruitiest salsa. Alexander, biggest macaroni sculpture. Chuck and May, longest hopscotch course. Rip, hugest ever bubble gum. Miss Sprinkles smiled at Rip. "Do you think you can blow a bubble that big?" Said Rip. He pulled an enormous wad of gum from his mouth. "I'm an expert at blowing bubbles. I even wrote a gum guide last night." He handed a sheet of paper to Miss Sprinkles. Rip's Poptastic Guide to Gum History. Long ago, in the days before gum, people would chew all kinds of stuff, like sap, wax, and even tar. Then one day, pop, gum came along. Nyam, nyam. Pro tip, only chew sugar-free gum. Too much sugar can turn you into a real monster. The first gum tasted like spice and licorice. But in the 1920s, factories finally made actual delicious stick-to-your-face bubble gum. Why do people chew gum? The 13% is for clean breath, winter fresh. 9% jar strange. Moo, that kid can chew. 5 to plug a leaky ship. Ahoy! 73 to annoy principals. My office now. How to blow these huge bubbles. Chew your gum until it's just right. Too stiff, no flavor, just right. Take a deep breath like you're about to dive in for sunken treasure. Moosh your tongue against the gum and blow. Ping pong size bubble. Bronze gives you the bronze. Basketball size bubble, silver. Boulder size bubble, world record. Miss Sprinkles read Rip's comic in a serious voice like a TV newscaster. Everyone laughed. Terrific ideas, maker bees. She said, "Now let's grab our chalk, bubblegum, and hot peppers and art supplies and get started." When the campers went to work, I'm still bummed our original hopscotch court got washed away, said Chuck. "But this clean sidewalk is like a big blank piece of shape. Is like a big blank sheet of paper. Alexander looked around. The sidewalk really was clean, and so were the streets and the buildings. Even the trash cans sparkled in the sunlight. Downtown looks as clean as Dad's car, thought Alexander. On my front porch. Let's go get to work, said May. They worked all morning and part of the afternoon, only taking a break for lunch. By early afternoon, Alexander was covered in glue, paint, and macaroni. So was his sculpture. Ooh, scary, said Miss Sprinkles. Then she called the other campers over. Come see bee maker bees. We can admire how Alexander's macaroni sculpture is coming along while we try Nikki's salsa. Nikki passed around cups of salsa. Everyone grabbed a chip, dipped it, and took a bite. Yow! They all shouted. 3 campers dropped their cups, splattering salsa all on the sidewalk. Everyone ran inside to drink from the water fountain. Miss Sprinkles had tears in her eyes. Whew, that's spicy, said Nikki. I think you just broke the record for hottest salsa. Oops, I must have used too many peppers, said Nikki. I'll go find a cookbook and double-check the recipe. The rest of the campers headed back outside. How's your bubble blowing going, Rip? It's tricky, said Rip. If I blow too hard, my gum goes flying all over the splash. Rip had stepped in a puddle. Ugh, he groaned. Where did that come from? Alexander looked around. Once again, the sidewalk was wet. The spilled salsa was gone, and so was the hopscotch court. His macaroni sculpture was still standing, but all the glue, glitter, and macaroni had been washed away. Not again, said Chuck. Alexander pulled Rip aside. There is not a cloud in the sky. What kind of monster did all this? Monster? Asked Rip. You heard the firefighter. It's probably some prankster who's been opening fire hydrants. Nikki burst out. The door! Look what I found in this cookbook. Alexander was still sweating from the salsa, but he felt a chill as Nikki handed him another monster card. Owlopano, level 7, fire-breathing bird who lights up the night. Attacks hot hoot 30, flame flap 70. Habitat trees with reddish-orange leaves to match its feathers. Diet hot stuff. Peppers, lava, fireworks. Wait, that thing can eat lava? That's cool. Type, it's a critter and unknown. A well-fed owl, a penno, can burn an entire city. Chapter 9, Red Hot Clues. The Minute Maker camp was almost over. Alexander, Rip, and Nikki ran to their SMP headquarters to review their monster clues. The monster causing all this trouble must be an owl and penno, said Nikki. Pop! Rip snapped his gum. The flaming owl monster? Yes, said Alexander. Look at the card. It loves hot stuff. I bet it was drawn to the hot steam in my bathroom. Oh wait, let me go back. Oh, that owl actually kind of has the same eyes as the thing that Alexander saw in his bathroom. The monster causing all this. Yes, said Alexander, look at the card. It loves hot stuff. I bet it was drawn to the hot steam in my bathroom. And we set up the hottest car wash in town. And we saw it at the hottest car wash in town, added Rip. Plus, that rubber house I picked up was super hot, said Alexander. And that was right before I saw the evil eyes. He squinted at the card. But these eyes don't look exactly like the evil eyes from my mirror from the car wash. The car wash was too steamy, said Rip. It was hard to tell what we saw in there. And remember, my hot salsa vanished this afternoon, cried Nikki. The aloe must have swooped in for a snack. The card says it eats hot stuff. Alexander scribbled some notes in his binder. Hot bathroom, hot car wash, hot sallow equals owlopeno. Owlopeno. Oh no, said Nikki, rereading the monster card. The owlopeno has fire powers. It could burn down the whole town. What if this bird brain has fire powers? We could stop it with water, said Rip. Alexander bought for a moment. But its weakness can't be water, said he said, because we keep seeing it around wet stuff. That's true. What else fights fire? Asked Rip. Ice, shouted Nicky. We could stop it with ice. Good thinking, said Alexander. Maybe we can freeze it. What if we trap it in Becca's ice pop cooler? Asked Nicky. It probably wouldn't fit, said Rip. We should tap it in an ice cream truck. Where would we find an ice cream truck? Asked Alexander. How about this? We'll brainstorm at home and make a plan in the morning. Just stay away from anything hot tonight. Alexander scanned the sky as he walked home. He saw a bright red sunset, but no flaming hot owls. To be safe, he convinced his dad to have a cold dinner. Cold turkey sandwich, iceberg lettuce, raspberry sherbet, ice water. I can't wait for S'more Fest tomorrow, said Alexander's dad. He handed Alexander a chocolate bar. Here, this is for the giant s'more. They chomp on the humongous marshmallow. Alexander laughed and headed up to bed. He listened for hoots as he drifted off to sleep, but he heard nothing. He smiled and slept soundly, confident he was one step ahead of the monster. Unfortunately, he was wrong. Chapter 10. Record Breakers. The next morning was hot and sunshiny, a perfect day for a bike ride to the library, thought Alexander. Then he frowned as sweat dripped down his forehead. It was also a perfect day for a flaming owl creature who draws its power from heat. He passed Durwood Park. Workers were building a metal arch over a long pile. When Alexander got to the library, he found everyone working on their world record. Outside near the fountain, Rip was pumping himself for his giant bubble, biggest bubble. Becca's ice pop stick tower was taller than she was. Tallest tower. Nixie was mixing a huge bowl of salsa, and May and Chuck were drawing the third hopscotch court this week. Alexander waved to Rip and Nicky. They raced right over. Pop! Rip snapped his gum. We came up with the perfect plan to trap the aloud. He snatched up a piece of chalk and drew it on the sidewalk. Operation Brrr. 1. Beat. Nicky mixes up an extra hot batch of 10 alarm salsa. 2. Wait. We hang out behind the library listening for hoots. 3. Breezy. The owl penno swoops in to eat. 4. Freezy. The SSMP snacks the monster with flurry ice pops. Great plan, said Alexander. So, the bait is already out. Now we wait. Keep an eye on the sky as we work on our world records, Nicky added. The SSMP went about their day. Rip and Nicky hung out near the fountain. Nicky hung out near the fountain, while Alexander got busy with macaroni glitter and googly eyes. Before they knew it, the afternoon had arrived, and there was still no sign of the owl penno. Maker bees, gather round, called Mrs. Sprinkles. It's share time. I can't wait to hear how you each set a record. The campers showed off their work. Wonderful, said Miss Sprinkles. I love seeing all of this creativity. Then she frowned a tiny bit. None of you made it into the official world record book, but you all made it into this book. Her smile came back as she held up a large, colorful, homemade book. I'll add photos of your projects. And the book was the greatest book of Sermont records. And we'll make this book a permanent part of our library so future campers can add their own records. The campers cheered. I can tell you worked hard because you're all so messy, said Miss Sprinkles. Salsa stains, bits of gum, ice ice pop drips, chalk dust, glue, glitter, macaroni, and googly eyes. The campers looked at one another and laughed. "Now, let's head home and clean up," said Miss Sprinkles. "S'morefest starts at sunset tonight." But the three friends did not run straight home. They walked over to Nikki's giant bowl of extra spicy salsa on the ground. "I don't get it," said Rip. "Why didn't the Hootie Hot Wings take the bait?" "Well, the jalapeno already tried my salsa yesterday," said Nikki. "Maybe it's hungry for something hotter." Alexander gasped. "Of course," he said. He walked over to a S'morefest poster and jabbed his finger at the glowing red bonfire. "Let's race home and gear up," said Alexander. Alexander continued. "Find anything that's ice cold. We'll meet at the park at just before sunset." Chapter 11, The Bonfire. It was almost sunset when Alexander met Rip and Nikki at Sherwood Park. Townspeople were spilling from all sides. "Did you bring cold stuff?" asked Alexander. "Yep," said Rip. "I tried to freeze up some water balloons." "Oh, I sometimes did that before. I would just put it in my freezer, and then when it would turn ice, I would just play with it a bit." He held up a bubbling bag. "They're still slushy, but it's still cold. I filled the soak blaster with chilled strawberry smoothie," said Nikki. "Awesome," said Alexander. All I found was this ice pack from when I scraped my knee last summer." Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep, beep. The bakery truck backed up what looked like a plywood. "Wow, whoa," said Nikki. "Those are giant graham crackers." "There you are," said Alexander's dad, jogging over. "Come on, let's add our chocolate bars to the s'more." Alexander and his friends unwrapped their chocolate bars and stacked them into the oversized graham stackers. They followed the townspeople down a hill to a low, grassy area. "I see why they call this part of the park the Sermont Bowl," said Nikki. Because it has a steep end bottom." Sermont Bowl. Caution, steep incline. A towering woodpile sat in the middle of the clearing. A metal arch was built over the woodpile. Hanging from the arch was an enormous marshmallow the size of a refrigerator. "Neato," said Alexander's dad, pointing at the banner. "That's how they're going to make the s'more." "Who cares how they make it?" said Rip. "I can't wait to eat it." Alexander looked around. He saw Becca, May, and Chuck with their families. He saw Chief Teresa. He saw Miss Sprinkles, but he did not see a fire-breathing owl. "We haven't heard a single hoot," said Rip, "or seen a single flaming feather," said Nikki. "I bet the jalapeno's waiting for the bonfire to get fired up," said Alexander. "Shh," said Alexander's dad. "Mayor Shank is about to speak." A man in suspenders stepped up to the woodpile. "Citizens of Sermont," said the mayor, "we are going to make history tonight." The crowd cheered. "I'd like to thank Sermont Sweet Shop for this magnificent marshmallow, and Crumb Brothers Bakery for these colossal crackers. I'd also like to thank all of you for bringing in 1,700 chocolate bars, aka 7,000. Wait, 700,000, I'm thinking. No, it's just 1,700. The crowd cheered louder. "The s'more will not only beat the world record," said Mayor Shank, "it'll break the hearts of every other mayor who wishes they had thought of such a cool idea. The s'more will put Sermont on the map." The mayor held a small torch above the woodpile. "Get ready," Alexander whispered to his friend. He adjusted his grip on his ice pack. Rip held a slush balloon in each hand, and Nicky gave her smooth blaster an extra pump. The mayor dropped the torch. Boom! The bonfire burst into flames. Right beside the bonfire, the chocolate bars began to melt on the stack of giant crackers. The fire roared, so did the crowd. "Things are heating up now," said Alexander. The three friends strained to listen for a hoot. The huge marshmallow began to get toasty on the bottom. So did Alexander. He took a step back. Splish! He felt a similar sensation. For the third time this week, his shoes were wet. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky looked all down. A gush of water was streaming across the ground, straight toward the bonfire. Chapter 12. A Splashy Entrance. Rip stomped in a large puddle that was quickly becoming a pool. "What the heck?" he shouted. "Where's all this water coming from? The park is flooding," said Nicky, hopping onto the park bench. "I don't get it," said Alexander, looking around. "Is this a trick? I thought the aloud hated water." More water flowed in. The crowd looked confused. As soon as the cool water hit the bonfire, whoosh, heavy clouds of steam billowed up in every direction. "It is impossible to see anything." "Stay together," said Alexander. He felt Rip and Nicky grab his shoulders. As more steam erupted from the campfire, he could hear people running in all directions, splashing in the ankle-deep water. So it went up to your ankle. Then he heard the mayor's shank voice over the loudspeaker. "Everyone, the Sermont Bowl is flooding. S'morefest is cancelled. Please remain calm, but also get out of here." "Rats," said Alexander's dad. "You kids run to your bikes. I'll see you back at home." Everyone splashed toward the park. Everyone except Alexander, Rip, and Nicky. They turned to face the bonfire, or what was left of it. A few embers glowed orange, then died for a few seconds. The water was still and the park was quiet, but then splish, splish, splash. "I hear footsteps," said Rip. Something's running this way." Alexander peered into the steam. He saw a flash of red. A small creature splashed through the still rising water and hopped onto the soggy wood pile. "It's the monster," said Alexander. "Attack!" The three friends raised their slush balloon, smoothie blaster, and ice pack. Then they charged into the steam. Chapter 13. "What water are you doing here?" The super secret monsters patrol splashed toward the ice, the monster bombarding it with their icy gear. "Take that, you fire-breathing featherball," said Rip, snapping his gum. The steam cloud began to clear. "Did we get it?" asked Alexander. "Did we stop the fire monster?" "Nope." A strange, echoey voice spoke the steam. "I am not a fire monster. I am a water monster. You filthy blockheads got it all wrong." "Huh?" said Nicky. At last the steam faded away. Alexander's jaw dropped. So did Nicky's. Rip's would have too, if it hadn't been blowing a huge bubble. The monster on the soggy wood pile wasn't an aloud. It was an angry fire hydrant. One of the valves was open and gushing water. Rip's bubble burst. His face was covered in gum. Gleh! The hydrant made a gurgly groan. "Look at you messy kids, with your glitter and your sidewalk chalk and your gum." Bloosh! The hydrant blasted water onto Rip's gum-covered face. Slop! Rip fell back into the rising water. The gum washed away. "Much better," said the hydrant. "The grown-ups in Sermont should be thanking me for cleaning up after their disgusting kids. Your mess has made me so steamed I could spout." The hydrant popped another valve, and water started gushing twice as fast. The water was now up to Alexander's chin and rising fast. "Okay, that's very tall. That's a lot of water." I mean, it might as well just fill the entire Sermont bowl thing. Go for higher ground, Alexander shouted to his friend. It's only the burb. He couldn't finish his sentence. He was over his head. He was in over his head. Chapter 14, Staying Afloat. Alexander held his breath and looked up. He was underwater. The park was more like a lake. He could now see the moon up there, glowing white against the night sky. Wait, wasn't the moon? It was the hot, goopy 2-ton marshmallow. He kicked to the surface and grabbed onto a log drifting by. There you are, you little squirt, said the hydrant. Actually, it wasn't a raft. It was a stack of giant graham crackers. Oh, I accidentally read the wrong line. Okay, the monster hopped onto Alexander's log. It leaned down, pressing its cold metal nose bolt into Alexander's face. I tried to scare you into staying clean. In the mirror and in the car wash, the hydrant gurgled. But you just keep blorp. A glop of something brown splattered against the hydrant's face. Gah! The hydrant jumped. Chocolate? Get it off! Get it off! Get it off! Get it off! Dry up, nozzle, shouted Rip. Alexander turned to see Rip and Nicky standing on a raft, lobbing a handful of melted chocolate in their hydrant. At the hydrant. Actually, it wasn't a raft. It was a stack of giant graham crackers. Nobody makes me dirty! You slobby kids are always tracking in mud, spilling salsa, and ruining sidewalks with your terrible artwork, the monster shouted. I'm going to flood this entire town to clean it, from top to bottom. But first, I'll wash you away. The hydrant blasted up into the air like a water-powered jet. It popped its top and spun in the sky, gushing water like an oversized lawn sprinkler. The water drops stung at Alexander's face as he swam over to Rip and Nicky. They pulled... Wait, maybe you can put this in the world record book. World record, what is it supposed to be called? S'morefest disaster world record. For all the water. They pulled him into a stack of crackers and melted chocolate. Tried to get to dry land, said Nicky. She leaned over the edge of the cracker raft and began paddling. We need all the help we can get, said Rip. He made 3 loud clicks with his tongue. A few ants hopped on from his pocket and gave him a little salute. Eat up, mateys, said Rip. The ants nibbled at the chocolate. Da-ding! They transformed into ginormous ants and began to paddle the raft with swift six-legged strokes. Yes, we're getting away, said Alexander. Not for long, rang out a voice from above. The hydrant jetted toward the SSMP's raft. Water cannons blasting. Chapter 15, Cracking Up. Galoosh. 100 gallons of water hit the SSMP's raft. It began to crumble apart. I'll dunk you all, shouted the hydrant. It's time to fight fire with fire, said Rip. I mean, to fight fire with water. To fight water with, you know what I mean. He leaned down and took a bite from the chocolatey raft. Rawr! Rip transformed into a knuckle-fist punch smasher. With a roar, Monster Rip leaped straight toward the fire plug. Clang! Rip head-butted the tiny hydrant for a moment. They both hung in the air. Crick! A deep crack ran up the hydrant's metal body. The monster frowned as its powerful gush of water slowed the trickle. Plop! Monster Rip dropped into a lake. Regular Rip surfaced. You did it! Cheered Alexander. He and Nicky pulled Rip aboard what was left of their raft. You stopped the monster, said Nicky. The hydrant began to shake, then it laughed, dribbling water. You haven't stopped me! You only cracked my armor! Let's see how you dirt trackers handle my true form! Bow to the hydrant Hydra! The monster's red metal shell fell away. In its place, a massive water creature rose up. It had a dragon-like snout and the same evil eyes Alexander had seen all week. Bloop! The water level lowered slightly as 3 more Hydra heads rose from the surface. Whoa, said Nicky, that's a lot of heads. We're surrounded, said Alexander. Chapter 16. That's more like it. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky huddled on their crumbling cracker as the hydrant Hydra let out a 4-headed roar. How can we stop a monster made of water? Asked Nicky. Alexander looked around. He could see the tops of trees and the tall metal arch. The melted marshmallows still hung from the arch. Just above this water surface, the monster's head soared in on the craft's raft. Then bloop, a 5th head had rose from the surface, and bloop, a 6th. With each new head, the water level got a little lower. Crud, said Rip. How many heads can this monster make? The largest Hydra head flashed Rip as an evil grin. As many as I like, it gurgled. Dozens of more watery heads rose up. The lake lowered a few more feet. Alexander gasped. Aren't the adults even gonna do anything when there's like a huge monster and a bunch of pools and 3 kids inside of it? Like, no adult is gonna just come. Even Alexander's dad, he's just okay, I'm out of here, going home. And you're not even gonna see if your kid's bike is even there, which it still is. And they're all inside of a cracker with chocolate on it. Alexander gasped, then smiled lightly. We give up, he shouted to the Hydra. Just please stop growing more heads. Huh? Said Rip. You wish, roared the monster heads all at once. Whoosh! The hydrant Hydra sucked up every last drop of water in the park, growing larger and twisted itself into a giant living wave. The SSMP and their crumbly bits of their raft plopped down into the mud. The Hydra wave rippled with anger. Just look at this mess, it roared. Alexander looked down at the mud, the soggy cracker bits, and the gobs of chocolate. Then he looked up at the huge drippy marshmallow. Do you think we're messy now? Said Alexander. Shouted. We're just getting started. He turned to Rip and Nicky. Follow my lead, swamp creatures. Alexander, Rip, and Nicky flopped, covering the Simpson muck. That's the last smudge, the monster gurgled. Prepare for the ultimate bath. The monster wave launched itself into the air. It twirled around, compressing itself into an angry-looking 2-ton raindrop. 2 tons? Ah! Alexander reached into Rip's muddy bag and grabbed 2 slush balloons. As the big raindrop flew down, Nicky lobbed Rip's balloon as the lever. Bloosh! Marshmallow release. Blop! The marshmallow plopped on the SSMP. Foomp! Floomp! Followed by the massive marshmallow. Wham! And the gigantic Graham cracker. The world's largest s'more sat in the middle of the mud pit. Alexander, Rip, Nicky, and the hydrant Hydra were trapped between the layers of the marshmallow and chocolate. Just then, the s'more began to tremble and crack, and gooey, heavy marshmallows smushed down the 3 friends and on the monster. What's happening to me? The monster gurgled. I'm so messy. Then kerplow! The s'more exploded. Globs of marshmallow and chocolate. Globs of wet marshmallow, chocolate, and cracker splattered into the mud. So did Alexander, Rip, and Nicky. What happened to that oversized drip? Asked Rip, looking around. I guess it couldn't handle getting turned into a supersized s'more, said Nicky. The hydrant hydra was more mess than the monster in the end, said Alexander. Ha, said Rip. He gave Alexander a friendly slap on the back. Oh, salamander, something stuck to your shirt. Hydrant hydra, level 4, world's cleanest monster. Attacks, gallon goosh, 20. Drippy dunk, 30. Habitat, any place with plumbing, car washes, bathrooms, etc. Diet, grapefruit scented soap. Type, thingy unknown. The hydrant hydra's many-headed body can transform into a giant wave or a dense raindrop. I can't believe we thought this was a fiery owl monster, said Alexander. Rip nodded. If the owlopeno ever does show up, I've got 50 more water balloons in my freezer. Nicky looked over at the muddy glob of what used to be the hydrant hydra. Nobody will know we actually made the world's largest s'more. After all, but we did break another record. We just made the world's largest mud pie. Alexander laughed as he put sticky, gloopy arms. Alexander laughed as he put his sticky, gloopy arms around his friend's shoulders. Right now, the only record I want to break is the world's longest shower. You may pause the video and read about the author if you like. So I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope to see you in my next one. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and give a thumbs up. I will see you in our next video. Bye!